What's up everybody, Super Dorks fan here for another car review. This is of course the 2008 Mitsubishi Eclipse GT V6. Huge thanks to Hans for providing me with this awesome Eclipse here to review for you guys today. So many of you were requesting these fourth gen Eclipses, and they're really rare and hard to find, especially with the manual and the V6. It's a very rare combo. This one even has the SE package, you can see, which gives you the more aggressive ground effects here, you know, with the front lip and the spoiler in the back and the stripe here on the sides. And yeah, I mean, it looks really cool. Of course, he's also added some custom touches with the wheels that are blacked out here, and you have the eyelids there on the headlights. And so, of course, he also does have a few performance modifications as well, including coilovers, which help it to sit a little bit lower and look a little bit more meaner that way as well. And overall, I mean, it was a very bold direction for Mitsubishi to take here with the fourth gen Eclipse. You know, it's very bubbly, but then you also do have the spoiler and stuff to make it a little more aggressive as well. But it's amazing how much larger it is than prior generation Eclipses. But overall, I still think it's a very unique and still pretty cool looking design. Right, so the interior of the 2008 Eclipse, well, it's actually pretty cool. So anyway, first things first, sitting down in these seats, they are a little bit on the wider side, but nicely leather wrapped seats here. The leather definitely isn't the most expensive, but again, we're in a Mitsubishi here. But it does, I mean, the bolstering, especially up here by the torso, is pretty good actually. And so a really cool looking seats I gotta add as well, with the little cutout there for the headrest part. And they just feel really nice. I mean, they could use a little bit more support towards the lumbar area, but overall, really great seats. Next to the steering wheel in the Eclipse, which is pretty good. So it's a little bit on the larger side. This is the first thing I noticed about it, but it's still just a good wheel, nicely leather wrapped, has a pretty good 9 3 grip, not the most comfortable. It's a little bit, comes to a point a little bit at the 9 3 position, but overall still a nice grip, has nice little 10 2 notches, and overall pretty good wheel. Next is the gauges in the Eclipse, which are very cool. I remember from the marketing for this car back when it first came out, these are motorcycle inspired gauges, and I can certainly see that. It looks like a motorcycle style gauge pod here, you know, with just your 2 basic gauges front and center there, and then you have the smaller auxiliary gauges there off in the corners, and it just, you know, your basic gauges, nothing else there really, no other screens, but just all the basics, and that's all you really need. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, you'll see, of course, right up top first, you have a basic old school clock there. But then coming down, you'll see these pieces that were custom painted white by the owner here, and so that helps to really set this off. I love interior colors, and I think it makes a lot more exciting than your typical black plastic you usually see in car interiors here. And so anyway, you have a Rockford Fosgate stereo here with a subwoofer in the trunk, which easily removes if you don't, you know, want it or you need more space. But really nice to have that from the factory. 6-disc CD changer, which was, you know, pretty good back in 2008. And you do also have the ability for satellite radio here. I'm not sure if this one actually has it, but that was an option here. You can see on the buttons. But you have a nice large volume knob and a tune knob that's pretty large as well. And so pretty easy. And speaking of large knobs, there's lots of large knobs here to control everything. You do come down to the climate controls. I think these are the largest climate control knobs I've seen in a long time. And so just 3 basic knobs. I mean, you could, you know, have poor eyesight and still be able to figure out how to work all this stuff. So really good that, you know, it's so straightforward and easy to use. And yeah, that's about it. You have your heated seat controls, power outlet there, and the shifter. So really just a simple interior, but it makes it feel really uncluttered. As far as storage space in the Eclipse, it's not bad. So first thing, coming over to the doors here, you have a tiny little map pocket here that almost looks too small for a map. It's just a tiny little slot there. Coming over to the center here, though, it's a lot better. You do have 2 good-sized cup holders here with a nice little cover, and then you have the center armrest, which is a tiny bit padded, but honestly just mostly hard plastic here. All the plastics, of course, in a 2008 Mitsubishi are fairly cheap, but that's, you know, just par for the course here.
there. But anyway, yeah, getting back to the center armrest, not soft really, but anyway, open that up and there is a ton of room in here. I mean, it's very, very deep, a couple different sections to it there. No additional power outlets or anything in here, obviously. Still, you know, a car that's 10 years old essentially, so you're not gonna have any USB jacks or anything like that, but good to have a huge amount of storage space in there. And you also have coin holders here as well, which is very handy. And so yeah, overall just a really nice amount of storage space in there. Backseat space in the Eclipse isn't terrible actually. You know, you do have the coupé kind of, you know, roof line here, so headroom is the limiting factor. And I'm 5'9", and me sitting behind myself, I have about an inch of legroom there, so it is kind of tight, you know, with the legroom as well. But headroom is really where you know, it's certainly tight. I mean, my head was basically right up against the glass there, and so anyone over 5'9", it's gonna be tough. The owner actually said that he fit someone 6'5" in the back of this thing, but he was hunched over. So I mean, it's okay in a pinch, you know, for just about anybody. But you know, obviously, you're not gonna want to use it on a regular basis. Trunk space in the Eclipse is actually really great. You know, it's a large hatchback, it's a very large opening, and those rear seats do fold down flat as well. So I mean, you take out that subwoofer, you fold down those seats, you got an enormous space there to use, and so actually it adds a lot of practicality here to the Eclipse, and you know, one of the perks of having the hatchback body style. All right, so start to go for a drive. The Eclipse here just has your basic key with the built-in buttons here. So anyway, you just put your foot on the clutch, key in the ignition, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2008 Mitsubishi Eclipse GT V6 with the manual. Well, first thing you notice, now he's added a short throw shifter, but this is actually a really easy manual transmission to drive. It's very defined throws, honestly. I mean, a lot of cars from 10 years ago that are, you know, not super high end have some really vague shifters, but this one isn't one of them. It's actually really easy to use. The clutch is very easy. It's a, you know, very predictable throw, and it's not tricky really in any way. So very easy for those wanting to learn manual on. Other things to note though, the ride, now this one has coilovers on it, and so the coilovers certainly make it a little bit firmer, but honestly, so far it's not that bad, even on potholes and stuff. I mean, you feel every little bump, but you know, it's not jarring or, you know, race car harsh or anything like that. So overall, they're pretty good. And I mean, there's a lot of coilovers out there that actually make your ride more comfortable than factory if you know, dial it in right and pick the right one. So you know, nothing wrong with coilovers for sure. Other things to note, visibility is actually pretty good here for the Eclipse. You do sit down pretty low. The driving position is very sporty in these, but you do still have a pretty nicely sized windshield there, and then, you know, windows here on the sides are pretty good. You do have a B pillar there that is a little bit further up than I would like, so, you know, but as long as you have your mirrors up, you know, correctly set up, you're okay. The view out of the back is great with that large hatch. Alrighty, so let's turn down onto this straight road here first and see how it does. Alright, it's torquey V6. It's actually really exciting. Alright, so the 2008 Mitsubishi Eclipse V6 GT has a big old 3.8 liter V6 engine that does 268 horsepower, I believe, and 263 pound-feet of torque from the factory. Now this one has a header back exhaust and also an engine intake, which might add a few more horsepower, but I'm amazed that this engine is so torquey and the throttle response is razor sharp as well. So between the two, it feels very exciting, and it really wants to go. It feels like it just wants to take off, and so it gives it that eagerness that really makes a car more exciting and fun to drive. But I mean, really, any RPM, I can even upshift, and I mean, even here in 5th gear, you know, 2,500 RPMs, it still just really, you know, plants you in the back of your seat and wants to move. So really pretty impressed with the power. This thing's a champ. I think back in the day, the 0 to 60 times for these were about 5.8, 5.6 seconds. So not a slouch either by any means. It's certainly a respectable 0 to 60 time. But yeah, and I love the way the gear ratios are set up in this too, because second is really short, and so that really helps to pull well, and 3rd gear here too really just, it loves to pull in any gear. It's awesome. Alright, so let's take it on some corners here and see how this thing handles. Now, of course, it's going to be much better than stock with the coilovers. It also has sway bars as well to keep it more buttoned down, which is obviously, that's a no-brainer handling upgrade. It just always helps in whatever car you're in. But the owner did tell me that from the factory, it certainly is pretty floaty, which is what you expect, you know, from these
Eclipses. That's the way they've always really been set up, as a softer, more comfortable setup, you know, for the, I guess, average consumer. But you know, it's very easy with the coilovers here to sharpen it up. All right, going around some tighter corners here now, and it does a really good job. It certainly feels wide. That's the one thing though I can say from the driver's seat is, you know, on these little skinny roads here, it certainly feels a little bit, like I said, a little wide, but it feels pretty good though, these coilovers. Now these aren't the lightest of things either though. These weigh around 3,400 pounds or so with the V6 and stuff, which is you know, the V6 is like an iron block, super heavy, so that doesn't help things with weight distribution and whatnot, but it still feels really good. And it's a pretty lightweight flywheel and stuff, so it's really easy to drive and rev match your downshifts and all that kind of stuff. But let's go for another acceleration, because why not? Get some torque steer there. But man, this thing really likes to rip. I gotta say, for what it is so impressive, and I love how this thing just puts the power down too. Now I have the traction control on, but it manages that, but it doesn't kill all the power or all the fun. So it's really nice they work with you with this system. Other things to note here about these Eclipses. They're from the factory, the brakes are not good. The owner actually said when he stood on the brakes for the first time, they warped. So he has them upgraded rotors here as well. They're from StopTech, which certainly help to give you better braking power. Also has better pads as well to help you with that. But as we lean into the brakes a little bit, they stop really well. I mean, great pedal feel, and the travel is pretty minimal. So right at the top of the pedal there, you get some bite. And as we toss it into a corner here, you certainly feel the weight a little bit, but it actually feels really good. I think part of that is also because of the tires. I think this runs 235 wide tires, and so that certainly helps. And this sounds so good. I just love taking this thing to Redline. It's just so much fun. I love the torquiness of this motor too. It might be like an old school kind of setup, but man, it just pulls like a champ. I love this engine. But yeah, so anyway, other things to note about the handling characteristics of the Eclipse here. The only thing I can really say is the steering feels fairly dead. There isn't a ton of feel. There is a little bit of feel there, but you know, whenever you're going around stuff, it's not extremely precise. The weighting is good. I will say that. It has a good weight to it, but like whether I'm going straight or I'm like mid-corner, the steering weight and all that kind of feels about the same. The steering feel feels about the same. So could use more steering feel, but that's really the only thing I can fault it for. Otherwise, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit bigger and it's a little bit heavier, but it does just fine. So yeah, now we're on Country Road here, and it's I gotta say, this thing feels really poised with these coilovers. I'm sure from the factory it's not quite as good, so I would definitely recommend coilovers and brakes as being two probably must-do upgrades for these. But it honestly, it feels really good. Like I said, it's just the little bit of extra weight, the wider stance, but otherwise it just feels good. And the fact that this engine makes power everywhere and the gearing is so short, you never find yourself waiting or wondering where the power's at. I mean, any corner you want to power out of, you do get some torque steer and stuff, since you have so much power going through the front wheels, but it's really not bad. And as long as you obviously manage that and are mindful of that, then it does really well. But yeah, so I mean, overall, it's a really good thing. I mean, it's amazing how these have depreciated so fast, and so it's kind of you can get one of these now for well into the 4-digit range. A lot of them are even closer to like $5,000 and stuff. And that money, I mean, it might not be perfect, but the owner says he hasn't had any issues with the engine or the transmission or any of that kind of stuff. It's little quirky things here and there that sometimes give them issues, but overall, I mean, this one's got 117,000 miles on it. It's still pulling strong, driving great, and so really an awesome first car for someone. The only thing I do want to say is that the turning radius in this thing is awful. It is really hard. It's one of those cars where you can't maneuver in tight spaces very easily. Obviously, it's a larger car as well, but on top of that, it's like you turn the wheel and it's like, oh, that's it. Like there isn't any more turns to lock. So it's that's just something, minor little gripe. But if you're maneuvering in tight parking lots and stuff, just something to keep in mind. But
But overall, I mean, it's an incredible bargain because you think about other stuff you get around this price range, you know, like a Cobalt SS or something like that, you know, which, you know, has some issues of its own, and you know, is a little less comfortable and a little less refined. This is actually really nice. Aside from the shorter gearing, which, you know, 6th gear, if you have an exhaust, can kind of get loud on the highway, but otherwise, you know, it's a really nice thing to cruise around and very comfortable for what it is. I think it's an incredible bargain, and if you can find, I mean, these things are unicorns. Finding a manual transmission V6 is super hard, but if you can find one, grab it, because they're, you know, rare. They're tons of fun for the money, and really a great, you know, first car, or for anyone looking for something on a budget. You know, this is, I think, a pretty solid choice. So anyway, huge thanks once again to Hans for allowing me to review his very nice Eclipse here for you guys. Let me know your thoughts on the 4th Gen Eclipse. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.